DSTV Channel 43 with me, Dan Moyane. Now, the rising cost of living looks set to hit South Africans even harder as the price of cooking oil is likely to go up further. Now, let's get some analysis and some reaction from Neil Coleman. He's from the Institute for Economic Justice, where he's a policy specialist. Neil, good afternoon. Thank you very much for your time. Can we just begin with what we've seen today? I just want to get you a sense. I mean, we've seen the trade union federations, SAF, COSATU and SAFTU, mobilizing workers in different parts of the country, painting the streets red and handing over memoranda, different types of demands to government, basically saying, please do something. We know that some of the factors are beyond you, but can you intervene to alleviate the plight of the working class?
Dan, I think we all know the historic role that trade unions played in the transformation of this country. And when commentators snipe at the unions and say, what do they think this is going to achieve? I think they forget that it was mobilization like this that led to the democratic transformation in our country. So this is a process. This is about workers and working class communities raising their concerns about really very difficult issues that they've been confronting, not only recently, but over the last few years. And, you know, we have multiple crises intersecting here of massive job loss, of the health crisis around COVID, of the high cost of living, of the high levels of hunger in society. So I think we should welcome the fact that they are drawing attention to these issues in a constructive way. They're raising demands, and I think the majority of South Africans would share their concerns. The question is, what are the policymakers and those with economic power going to do to respond to these important questions that they're raising?
Yeah, earlier, about an hour or so ago, Neil, I interviewed a professor from the Department of Economic and Management Sciences, University of Pretoria. They've done some research which show that unless it's done differently, any reduction in the fuel price will not benefit the poorest of the poor. They say there has to be effective policy that is targeted at really enabling the poor to get their deserved support. What do you think?
Dan, you know, with policy, it's always about, you know, whose interests are being prioritized. When you have the political will and the preparedness to take action because you feel that, you know, the poor in the country, ordinary working people are suffering in a way which is not a sustainable situation, then you can find interventions which both arrest the situation in the short term, but also lay the basis for a longer-term solution to the issue. So we see around the world, you know, governments taking action to address this issue of rising prices. In France recently, they placed a cap on energy prices, on fuel and gas prices, as well as rents. In Panama recently, we've seen they've placed a cap on a whole range of essential food prices and so on and so forth. So, you know, with the situation of massive job loss, you know, stagnating wages, you have, and rising prices, you have, you know, households under enormous pressure. So the question is, what instruments, policy instruments, is government going to use? And nobody's saying that they must be reckless interventions which are going to backfire, but there needs to be a sense that there's a seriousness to address this crisis which people are confronting.
Yeah, so there will be a number of possible policy levers, if I may call them that, that this government can have. I mean, just speaking as well to the Competition Commission earlier, they're also very worried and busy investigating the fact that in the sunflower oil value chain, the processing side of it has increased prices by a whopping 72% since last year, which is quite a big jump, and there might be opportunistic price increases there. I mean, which household in South Africa, if they can afford to not to use cooking oil in their daily lives? So what kind of measures could be policy measures could be used? What do you think?
So I think you've just put your finger on a very important one, which is competition policy to prevent profiteering and anti-competitive practices. What we've seen around the world is that many corporations are price gouging and benefiting from the situation of inflation, profiteering. So There need to be interventions at the level of competition policy. But there also need to be practical, concrete actions which puts incomes into the hands of poor and working people. So things like the COVID Special Relief of Distress grant is set at much too low a level. Another area of relief which could be important is raising the level of the national minimum wage, which is not keeping pace with this level of rising food prices and fuel prices and so on. So, you need to differentiate and work out where are the worst effects, where are the worst impacts, and address those impacts at the level of the low paid in society, the poor in society, assist them in counteracting the impacts of these price rises.
Yeah, we hear a lot about the triple challenges: poverty, inequality, and unemployment. And all of them are at the worst levels, no matter which angle you look at them at. From a policy perspective, is it possible to look at them and say, where do we prioritize? Is it possible that you could have a policy that's focusing on one of them? I had a speaker recently saying, if we can provide jobs to everybody, then you'll begin to lift people out of poverty because they'll have disposable income, they'll be able to do things with the money. Is the focus unemployment, getting jobs done, or what do you think policy-wise?
Yeah, Bradan, I think anybody who says we're going to give everybody a job in this country in the short to medium term is really, it's a pipe dream. It's not going to happen, and therefore it's quite a cruel sort of ideology to push that it's only jobs that will assist people. It must be a combination of different interventions. Yes, macroeconomic and industrial policy interventions which target particular sectors of our economy. We just saw the Stats SA Q2 release yesterday, which showed some improvement in employment in certain sectors, but other sectors like manufacturing continue to shed jobs. So what are the macroeconomic policy and industrial policy interventions which can ensure a more labor-intensive development of our economy? But there are other interventions which in the short term can put money in the hands of poor and working people, such as the universal basic income grant, can rapidly impact on the poorest in our societies and create that stimulus effect that you were talking about. So there's no silver bullet. It's about a combination of policy interventions. But most critically, what the unions are raising in these demonstrations is that the concerns of working people are not being prioritized in policy currently, and that is what needs to change.
Okay, thank you very much, Neil, for your time and your thoughts and insights this afternoon as we look at what really policy-wise can be done to change the plight of the working class. And today focusing, of course, on the cost of living following the demonstrations we've seen in different parts of the country.